There are seasons when heaven speaks loudly, and there are seasons when heaven commands silence. There are moments when God releases a word that shakes your spirit, and there are moments when He whispers, "Be still." Many do not discern this difference, and because of that, they speak when they should be silent. Today, the Spirit is calling us to recognize the sacred power of restraint. Not every moment is for speaking. Some moments are for trusting, waiting, and obeying quietly. We live in a world that rewards noise, but the kingdom often moves in silence. When God begins a deep work in your life, He does not always announce it publicly. Sometimes He hides it in quiet places, where faith grows without interruption, and where obedience is tested in stillness. The word declares in Ecclesiastes 3:7 that there is a time to keep silence and a time to speak. This means silence is not weakness, it is timing. It is divine alignment. When you speak outside of God's timing, even truth can become harmful. But when you align your voice with His instruction, your words carry power, authority, and life. Many believers lose their breakthrough not because God failed, but because they could not hold their tongue. They spoke too soon, explained too much, reacted too quickly. But heaven is saying today, this is not the time to talk. This is the time to trust me in the unseen, to walk by faith and not by sight, and to allow me to complete what I have started in you. So today, position your heart to listen more than you speak. Let your spirit become sensitive to the voice of God, even when that voice tells you to remain silent. Because in that silence, God is working. In that quiet place, miracles are forming. And when the time comes to speak, your voice will not be empty, it will carry the weight of heaven. Never underestimate the power hidden within your tongue. Though it is small, it carries the authority to shape atmospheres, influence destinies, and direct the course of your life. A single word can ignite hope, while another can release destruction. Many are fighting battles today that were not started by enemies, but by careless words spoken in moments of impatience, fear, or doubt. James 35:6 reveals that the tongue is like a fire, capable of setting an entire forest ablaze. This means your words are not neutral, they carry spiritual weight. When you speak, you are not just expressing thoughts, you are releasing something into the atmosphere. Whether it becomes a blessing or a burden depends on what flows out of your mouth. The word also declares in Proverbs 18:21 that death and life are in the power of the tongue. This is not symbolic language, it is spiritual reality. You can speak life into your situation, calling forth faith, strength, and victory, or you can speak death, feeding fear, doubt, and defeat. Every word you release is a seed, and every seed will eventually produce a harvest. Many believers unknowingly sabotage what God is building because they speak at the wrong time. When God is working behind the scenes shaping your miracle, your negative words can disrupt the process. Complaining, explaining too much, or speaking out of fear can delay what heaven is trying to establish. This is why discernment is necessary to know when to speak and when to remain silent. So I urge you today, guard your tongue with spiritual discipline. Do not allow your mouth to move faster than your faith. When you feel pressure rising, when circumstances look uncertain, resist the urge to speak prematurely. Instead, let your silence become an act of trust. Because sometimes the greatest faith you can demonstrate is not in what you say, but in what you choose not to say. There are divine moments when silence is not optional. It is obedience. There are seasons when God deliberately restrains your voice, not to weaken you, but to align you with His perfect will. In these sacred moments, heaven whispers instructions that go against human instinct. While everything within you wants to respond, explain, or defend, the Spirit gently says, "Be still." This silence is not empty, it is filled with divine purpose. It is in these moments that your obedience is measured, not by what you say, but by what you are willing to withhold. There are times when God clearly instructs your spirit, do not explain. Even when you are misunderstood, misjudged, or falsely accused, He calls you to remain quiet. The natural desire is to correct people, to make your side known, to prove your innocence. But God sees what you cannot see. He knows that your explanation may interfere with his greater plan. When he tells you to stay silent, it is because he is preparing a defense far greater than any words you could form. Then there are moments when he says, "Do not defend yourself." This is one of the hardest commands for the human heart to obey. Pride rises, emotions stir, and the urge to justify yourself becomes overwhelming. But silence in this season is not defeat. It is surrender. It is a declaration that you trust God to be your defender. Just as it is written in Exodus 14:14, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Your stillness becomes the platform for his power to be revealed. God also says, "Do not reveal what I am doing yet." Not every blessing, not every vision, not every breakthrough is meant to be announced prematurely. There are processes that must remain hidden until they are fully formed. Speaking too soon can expose what is still fragile. It can invite doubt, criticism, or spiritual opposition. That is why God covers certain things in silence, allowing them to grow in the secret place until the appointed time of revelation arrives. Understand this deeply. Silence is not weakness, it is spiritual discipline. It requires strength to hold your tongue when emotions are high. It requires faith to trust God when you cannot speak your way out. Silence is an act of warfare, a shield against unnecessary battles. When you choose to obey God in silence, you are not losing your voice, you are positioning yourself to witness his victory. And when he finally speaks on your behalf, no one will be able to stand against it. Silence is not empty, it is a builder of faith. When God calls you into quietness, he is not removing your voice, he is strengthening your trust. Many times we think faith is proven by what we say, but often it is revealed by what we restrain. In the hidden place of silence, your spirit learns to depend fully on God without needing constant verbal confirmation. Talking too much can release doubt into what God is trying to establish. When you keep speaking about your situation, analyzing every detail, and expressing every fear, you begin to magnify the problem instead of the promise. Words spoken carelessly can open doors to fear and confusion. Silence, however, shuts those doors and allows faith to grow without interference. Excessive speaking can also invite unnecessary opposition. Not everyone is assigned to understand your journey. When you speak too freely about what God is doing, you may expose your vision to doubt, criticism, or even spiritual resistance. What was meant to grow quietly can become a target. That is why wisdom teaches you to guard your words and protect what God has planted within you. In Luke 1:20, Zechariah was silenced until the promise was fulfilled. This was not punishment alone, it was protection. God knew that his words, shaped by doubt, could interfere with the miracle, so heaven intervened and closed his mouth until the appointed time. This teaches us that silence can be a divine strategy to preserve what God is bringing to pass. Sometimes God silences you because your words cannot carry the miracle yet. Your current level of faith may not be strong enough to sustain what he is about to do, so he allows you to remain quiet while he builds something deeper within you. And when the promise is finally revealed, your voice will return not with doubt, but with power, testimony, and unshakable faith. There is a real danger in speaking too soon. Many destinies have been delayed not because God changed his mind, but because people released words before their time. When God places something in your spirit, it is often in seed form. If you expose that seed too early, before it takes root, it becomes vulnerable. Timing is everything in the kingdom, and premature words can disrupt divine order. Premature words can delay blessings that were already set in motion. When you speak out of excitement, fear, or impatience, you may unknowingly interfere with God's process. What he intended to develop in silence now faces pressure from outside voices. Doubt, questions, and negativity can enter, slowing down what should have progressed smoothly under his covering. Speaking too soon can also expose spiritual battles before you are ready to face them. Not every vision needs an audience. When you reveal what God is doing too early, you may attract resistance that was not meant for this stage. There are spiritual forces that respond to what is spoken, and careless words can announce what should have remained hidden. Consider the example in Genesis 37, where Joseph shared his dreams openly. Though the dreams were from God, the timing of sharing them created jealousy and conflict. His brothers could not understand what God had shown him, and their reaction brought unnecessary hardship into his journey. The promise was real, but the exposure came too soon. Not everyone is meant to hear what God told you. Some things are sacred, meant to be carried quietly until God Himself reveals them. Wisdom is knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. Protect your vision, guard your words, and trust that when the time is right, God will bring everything into the light without your effort. When we look to the life of Jesus, we see the most powerful example of silence ever demonstrated. In moments where words could have defended him, justified him, or silenced his accusers, he chose restraint. His silence was not weakness, nor was it fear, it was divine control. He understood the will of the Father so deeply that he refused to speak outside of it, even under intense pressure. Matthew 27:12-14b shows us that before his accusers, he remained silent. False accusations were thrown at him, yet he did not respond. This kind of silence is not natural, it is supernatural. It flows from a place of complete trust in God. Jesus knew that defending himself with words would interfere with the greater purpose being fulfilled through his sacrifice. Silence, in this context, becomes a form of authority. When you refuse to engage in every argument, when you choose not to react to every accusation, you demonstrate a confidence that goes beyond human understanding. It shows that your identity is not dependent on the opinions of others. Instead, it is anchored in God. This kind of silence carries weight, dignity, and spiritual power. Many people exhaust themselves trying to win every argument, prove every point, and correct every misunderstanding. But Jesus teaches us a higher way. There are battles you are not called to fight with words. Engaging in every conflict can drain your energy and distract you from your purpose. Sometimes, the greatest victory is found in walking away in silence, trusting God to handle what you cannot. Remember this deeply. You do not need to win every argument. God will vindicate you. When you remain silent under pressure, you are giving God space to move on your behalf. He sees every injustice, every false word, every hidden attack, and in His perfect time He will bring truth to light. Your silence today may feel difficult, but it is positioning you for divine vindication tomorrow. There are moments in life when everything around you feels like a storm. Situations become chaotic, pressure rises, and uncertainty fills your heart. In such times, the natural instinct is to react, to speak quickly, to complain, or to panic. But the voice of God does not echo the noise of the storm. Instead, it calls you into a place that feels unnatural to the flesh, stillness and quiet trust. When life becomes overwhelming, many rush to express their fear through words. Complaints begin to flow and anxiety takes control of the tongue. But every word spoken in panic can deepen the storm within. Instead of bringing clarity, it multiplies confusion. This is why God gently calls His people away from noise, away from reaction, and into a posture of silence where peace can begin to rise again. The word declares in Psalms 46:10, "Be still and know that I am God." This is not just a suggestion, it is an instruction filled with power. To be still means to release control, to stop striving, and to trust that God remains sovereign even when circumstances seem out of order. In stillness, you reconnect with His authority over every storm. Silence in the midst of chaos is an act of deep faith. It is choosing not to let your emotions dictate your response. It is standing firm when everything inside you wants to react. When you hold your tongue in difficult moments, you are declaring that your confidence is not in what you see, but in who God is. That kind of silence shifts the atmosphere around you. Understand this truth. Silence creates space for God to move. When you step back from the noise, you allow His presence to step in. In that quiet place, He brings peace, direction, and strength. The storm may still be around you, but it will no longer control you. Because when you are still before God, you begin to see that He has been in control all along. Holding your tongue is not weakness, it is spiritual warfare. There are battles you will never win with loud words, but you will overcome through quiet obedience. When pressure rises and emotions stir, silence becomes your weapon. It is in these moments that restraint speaks louder than reaction. Not speaking negativity is an act of faith. When everything around you feels uncertain, choosing not to declare fear is powerful. Faith is not always loud. Sometimes it is the quiet decision to trust God without verbalizing doubt. Your silence can reflect a deeper confidence in God's control. Refusing to complain is victory in itself. Complaints feed discouragement, but silence starves it. When you choose gratitude or stillness over murmuring, you break cycles that keep many bound. Victory is not always visible in action. It is often hidden in disciplined responses. The word in Proverbs 21:3 teaches that guarding your mouth protects your life. This is a spiritual principle. What you allow out of your mouth shapes what you experience. Guarding your words is guarding your destiny from unnecessary harm. Never underestimate this truth. Silence can defeat the enemy more than words. When you refuse to engage in negativity, fear loses its voice. When you remain quiet under pressure, you deny the enemy access. Your silence becomes a shield, and through it, God secures your victory. Understand this clearly. Silence is not permanent. What feels like a quiet season is not the end of your story. God does not silence you to forget you. He silences you to prepare you. There is a divine timing in every process, and your voice will rise again at the appointed moment. There will come a time when you will speak, testify, and declare what God has done. The same mouth that was once silent will overflow with praise and evidence of His faithfulness. What you are holding quietly today will become a testimony tomorrow, and it will carry power because it was birthed in obedience. The word says in Habakkuk 2:3 that the vision will speak in its time. This means you do not have to force it. You do not have to explain it. When the time is right, what God has planted will speak for itself, clearly and powerfully, without struggle. Do not grow weary in your silent season. It may feel hidden, slow, or even misunderstood, but God is working beneath the surface. Just because nothing is being said does not mean nothing is happening. In fact, the deepest works of God often happen in quiet places. Take courage in this truth. What God is doing in silence will be revealed in power. When the moment comes, it will not be small or unnoticed. It will be undeniable. And when you finally speak, it will not be empty words. It will be a testimony filled with glory, strength, and victory. Hear this declaration in your spirit today. This is not your season to argue. This is your season to trust. God is calling you away from striving, away from proving, and into a deeper place of surrender. You do not need to fight every battle with words when heaven is already moving on your behalf. This week, make a conscious decision to guard your words. Do not speak out of emotion, frustration, or fear. Let your mouth come under the authority of your faith. Before you respond, pause and ask, is this aligned with what God is doing? If not, choose silence and let wisdom lead you. Learn to listen more than you speak. In a noisy world, those who hear God clearly are those who create space for His voice. When you quiet your spirit, you begin to discern His direction. Guidance becomes clearer, and peace replaces confusion. Listening is not passive, it is powerful. Let God fight your battles. You are not called to carry every burden or defend every situation. When you step back in obedience, God steps forward in power. Trust Him to handle what you cannot control. His ways are higher, and His timing is perfect, even when it feels delayed. The word in Isaiah 30:15 reminds us that in quietness and trust is your strength. This is your foundation. Your strength is not in loud reactions, but in calm confidence in God. Walk in these truths, and you will see His hand move mightily in your life.